Thank you, Dr. Day, and the rest of the panel. Next, I would like to introduce a couple occupational therapists. They're very helpful in getting us to go about our daily activities and giving us good pointers on how helpful ways we can get around. The first one is Jessica Wilczynski, as she's an occupational therapist who works with neurologic populations, member of Johns Hopkins interdisciplinary team at the Ataxia Center, and educates patients and families in exercise and household modifications. And Marlene Casey, an occupational therapist and certified lymphedema therapist at Johns Hopkins Hospital. She treats both the ataxia and oncology patients, and this is the third time Marlene has presented at the National Ataxia Conference. Please welcome Marlene and Jessica.
So my name's Marlena. I'll get us started. Jess will be joining us in just a bit. We are both occupational therapists at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and we're here today to talk to you about home safety modifications. How can you make the environment you're living in be better so you can be more successful and independent? And I don't know if I have this sensor. To switch the slide?
Should be up there. I think it's just that mouse.
Okay. Okay, I introduced us.
Hi, everybody.
Just going in here. No, it's not ready. The next slide. Just a second. Technical difficulties trying to go on to the next slide.
Is it on?
Our objectives today are to understand how to adapt and modify the home environment, identify accessibility options for your current home environment, identify smart home features, so that's a phrase you may be hearing more of now, as assistive technology, and understand universal design concepts and how to access contractors to make these changes.
Okay, so some barriers are more person-specific, so kind of things that are inside you and things that you do, and then some are more environmental-specific. So more person-specific challenges could include if you're overusing your muscles, if you have back pain, if you have a hard time with balance or walking or transfers, or if you have some difficulty with dressing or needing assistance for bathing or even grocery shopping and things like that. And then more environmental challenges, or if you have a hard time with entering your home because the doorways are too narrow, if there's a really large threshold, or if the lighting is really poor. Some other areas that would be challenging, like if you can't get to certain spaces in your bedroom or your bathroom, or if countertops or cabinets are a little bit too high or out of reach or uncomfortable for you to reach. And, okay.
So why are we concerned about the home environment? The biggest thing we tend to worry about, especially with ataxia, is falls, because that is what presents a danger to us. A fall is defined as a sudden and unintentional change in position, resulting in an individual landing at a lower level. So that does not always mean you coming fully to the floor. That can mean you injuring yourself on an object, the edge of a counter. Any loss of balance is what we are worried about. Anything that sort of trips you up, let's say. What concerns us then is that this fear of falling decreases our social interactions, because if we are concerned about always falling in an environment, it makes us not want to go to that environment. So we want to show you today how to reduce this risk of falling in your home, because as you can see on this next slide, most of our falls occur within our home. So this is where we most often fall. And most of these falls are not due to what you are doing or so much yourself, but due to the environmental barriers that are impacting you with ataxia. First, we're going to address different parts of the home, and the gateway to your home, thank you, is entrance modifications. How do you get in and out? How are you accessing the community? How are you getting into your home? What we want to do is make it more accessible and make it safer to do this. Ways that we can do that are increasing lighting, making lighting with sensors, so those can be based on the time of day. If you know it gets dark at 6 o'clock, having the lights come on a little bit before, or motion-activated sensors for lights. So when it senses you coming and going, it's lighting up the entranceway. Installing stair rails on both sides. It's important to have that bilateral versus one-sided, what we call unilateral, support, because if you do go to fall, you have something that you can access on both sides to regain your balance. Lever versus knob-style door handles. A knob requires the use of our full hand versus a lever, if we have decreased grasp, which can happen with ataxia, we can use our wrist or versus like our thumb to turn the door handle. A use of a beveled, no-trip threshold. I'll show you a picture of that in the next slide so I can explain a little bit better. Removing a screen or a storm door. This is important because while those things are nice sometimes to enjoy a breeze without flies, they're an additional barrier that prevents us or can make it difficult from getting into and out of the home. Increasing the width of your doorways to 36 inches or greater. This allows us to use things like rollators and wheelchairs to get into and out of our home without having to constantly bump into something. And then installing a ramp, which Jessica will talk about. I'm going to show you some pictures here about the entrance modifications. And excuse us, we are shuffling papers because sometimes the screen can be a little bit difficult to see. That's why you see us up here doing that. The first picture to the left is the entrance with wide steps that you can place your whole foot on. Some older homes have very narrow steps that can make it difficult for us to have a nice landing on the step. You see the handrails on both sides so we can have a nice firm grasp. The middle picture at the bottom is what is called an easy access threshold. These are available online for around $30, and they're a brand that has been tried and true that you can place in front of a doorway if you have a home that isn't modified to make it easier so you don't have a step up in. An average threshold into a home is between 1 inch and 1.5 inches, so this takes away that step and allows you to glide into the home easier. And the picture on the right is a home that has been built with a beveled threshold, meaning it has a texture to it, so it's gripping either the bottom of your shoe, your rollator walker, or your wheelchair walker better, making it easier to get into the home.
Okay, so talking a little bit more at lighting, if you look at the picture up there, one is looking at the same staircase, one with lighting with predominantly more at the bottom of the steps, whereas then in the second lighting, they installed some lighting at the top of the steps using LED bulbs that are a little bit more high wattage but energy efficient at the same time. And the picture that might be a little bit blurry to you is looking at ramps. So if some of you have ramps, you've probably gotten them installed. I would recommend getting an ADA certified contractor to install the ramp because they'll be very strict with sticking with the guidelines. So just some simple guidelines to adhere to. When you have a ramp, you should have 2 level surfaces on both sides with a certain slope and a certain pitch. You should be using the least possible slope that you can, and the ratio that they'll recommend is about 1 to 12, depending on what unit of measure that you're working with. The landing should be about 60 inches on both sides to give you enough room if you need to turn around or then back up to step into or out of a doorway.
So now that we've addressed getting into and out of the home, what can we do inside the home to make moving around easier? I'm going to start with some general interior modifications. The first one that I like is installing swing clear hinges on doorways. I'll show you a picture of that to show you what I mean, so you can go to your local store and purchase it. However, what they do is widen the doorway so you can make full use of the door, so that the door can open to its fullest extent. Installing door lever handles again, so the same thing on the inside versus the knobs. creating clear pathways in between rooms and checking carpeting to make sure that all the carpet is level in between rooms or the surfaces are level. And if they are not, and it's a throw rug, taping down that throw rug to ensure safety. And installing a stair glide or elevator or a hydraulic lift. The hydraulic lifts tend to be more affordable, and they're something that you can put your assistive device on versus an elevator, which would obviously be an expensive addition to the home. I want to give a quote here that sort of exemplifies the importance of making these modifications and how it can really assist somebody's life. After the adaptation, our son would not have to be waiting for us all the time, and we did not have to follow him all the time. He took the elevator, went up and down, played outside. It really gave him back the independence he had lost and reduced the burden of care for caregivers and increased his self-esteem. This shows that by making simple modifications to the home, it can really make a difference and allow us to have more independence. These are the pictures of the swing clear hinges. As you can see, normally when we open a door, there's that little bit of space which results in about 2 to 3 inches of space lost, where the door comes and hits the door frame. The swing clear hinge allows it to extend the door, resulting in a wider opening. And sometimes if we're using a rollator or a wheelchair, it's that 2 to 3 inches that we need to get through the door successfully. Again, not using the knob, but using the lever. And there's the stair glide going up and down. So for stairways that have a turn or something else, it would require a little bit more modification or contract service. But if you have an up and down or straight vertical stair glide, that makes it a little bit easier.
Okay, so some more interior modifications. Instead of just one switch to enter and exit a room or going up and down the stairs, you can actually have a switch at the top and the bottom that controls the same light fixture. So that way, if you have a really big room or when you're going up and down stairs, you are not doing anything in the dark, and you don't have to make excessive movements to turn the light on and off. Having handrails on both sides, we've seen some pictures of them. I'm going to show you some more. And for steps, if you have non-carpeted steps, having a non-slip surface on them, or if you do have carpet, making sure it's not busy, that the carpeting is low pile, and that there's thin padding underneath, so you're not going to be catching your foot when you're going up and down. And having some automatic night lights. I'm going to show you 2 different examples on the next slide, but they can really help when you're getting up in the middle of the night, because I know I, for one, have to get up about 3 times to go to the bathroom, and it's not really great to do that if you're in the dark. All right, so some examples, some bilateral handrails, and with the modern advances that are coming up, they look really nice sometimes, inside and outside of the home. The second picture on the top is looking at the contrast treads on stairs. So if you have a hard time when you're at the top of steps, seeing the difference between one step and the one below it, you can use contrasting electrical tape to put at the edge of the step so you know exactly where your foot needs to go and you're not going to slide right off. The third picture is looking at non-slip stair treads, and those are reasonably affordable, somewhere between like $20 to $40 depending on the brand that you can put on the step, and that just, if you have a tendency to slip, this just takes away that and increases your safety a little bit. And on the bottom, these are 2 different styles of automatic night lights. The one on the left is the standard nightlight that usually comes on when the room gets a little bit darker. If you put them low near the ground, you'll be able to see where your foot is being placed as you're walking around. And the one on the right is motion centered. So they're a little bit more expensive, but it will go on when it sees that you're coming, and it'll go off when there's no movement around.
So the next room we're going to talk about is the kitchen. Kitchens tend to be the gathering place for us and our families, and it has a large, again, social component. So adapting that so that it works for everybody. The best adaptations are making it easier for you so you can conserve energy and do the things you want to do in the kitchen versus making it feel like a chore. Some ways to make things easier are to move most commonly used items to the bottom shelf of the higher cabinets and the top shelf of the lower cabinets. That way you're not always reaching up and down to an extreme or risk a fall. Also installing the use of lazy Susans, so you can have a lot of items accessible. That way you can turn versus having to reach into 10 different cabinets to get items that are similar. A refrigerator, there's a couple different styles, and Jess will go over them, but placing items most commonly used at the front of the refrigerator. So for instance, if you know you have fried eggs every morning, placing eggs, milk, if you keep your coffee in the fridge, all those things right at the front and at a height you can reach so that you're not constantly reaching in the back or having to rearrange in a tight refrigerator. Having a working space in the kitchen so that if you need to pace activities and sit down to do them, that your working space is convenient to items you are using, and that you have stable seating or a stable standing area if you're using a rollator. In the kitchen, OTs, we love adaptive equipment and we love to change things, and there's a ton of adaptive equipment for the kitchen. Weighted silverware is a good way to address a tremor because it allows you to tell your body where it is in space. The weight provides proprioceptive feedback, so your body doesn't have to work so hard to stabilize the hand you're using to eat with. A reacher to grab maybe things that are harder out of place or the things you didn't move to the front of the cabinets. A weighted cutting board, that way you're not at risk with a thin cutting board moving, but it has some weight to it. And if you look on Amazon or Google, they have some really neat ones now. Some have a stabilizing stick on them where you can stick an apple to cut. So if you have one hand that tends to be more stable than the other, you can use that hand to cut. A rocker knife, that's a knife that's shaped like a U, where you can use a whole hand grasp to cut an item versus having to use a fine-tuned grasp with a regular knife. We want good lighting in these areas. You'll hear us say that over and over because good lighting makes it easier to see. And then making sure that you have roll-under spaces. So oftentimes people will leave a roll-under space underneath their sink because if we're doing dishes a large portion of the day, it makes it easier to sit while doing these tasks versus to stand. Speaking of water, another important thing is the water temperature. I don't know about you, but I have no idea what my water heater is set at. However, it's supposed to be set at 120 degrees or less, so checking those things for safety is also good. Next, we're going to address the bathroom. Overall, bathrooms should have comfortable height toilets, non-slip floors, both in the tub and the shower as well, and low or no threshold entrances to your shower. So there are two kinds of showers, a walk-in shower, which is what is more accessible, but they still tend to have an inch or so threshold, and then a tub shower, one you have to lift your leg into. Installing grab bars at the toilet, sink, and shower is good because if you do lose your balance, because we're working with slippery surfaces in the bathroom, you have something to stabilize yourself with. Lever-style faucets for the sink, an adjustable handheld shower head. This way, if you were using a tub transfer bench or a shower chair, you are not sitting with direct water pressure on you. You can control where the water goes. Non-slip tape that you can place on the tub. This is typically sold at Walmart or you can get it online. These are strips that you can place in the tub yourself if you know you're standing in a certain area. Rounding corners to promote safety. So picking a sink style, oftentimes they have those hard, sharp corners, placing foam padding on them, which you can buy at your local hardware store, or ensuring that you have rounded corners, because when we fall, those will be the first things to hurt us. Creating sitting clearance at your vanity by removing the vanity door and shelves, and then increasing the height of the toilet by either purchasing a comfort height toilet. Most toilets are 17 inches, and those are too low typically for having trouble sitting down and getting up. Or you can add a seat riser, a component that you put on the seat of your toilet to make it a little bit higher. And a lot of those come with grab bars, so it can help you get up as well. This is a picture of the lever handles. So there's the ones that go up, there's the ones that go to the side, and now a lot of sinks are even getting sensor, so you can just place your hand in front of them. Those are the non-skid treads I had been mentioning earlier for the tub, and these tend to be aesthetically pleasing if you don't want the big bubble kind we're so used to, which is on the next slide here. Now, while those tend to stick and be removable, so if you're renting, for example, or don't want to place something on the bottom of your tub, it would be the blue one you would use here. The tub transfer bench, typically as occupational therapists, we think about those for persons who are using a wheelchair. However, if you have trouble at all clearing your foot over the tub edge or are worried about it, it would be smarter to purchase the tub transfer bench because you could transition to it if needed. And the picture on the top right is the shower chair. Notice the shower chair, you can adjust the height. It has a suction cup bottom, the back, and the handles are removable. So even with the adaptive equipment itself, it can be modified. The picture at the top left is the handheld shower head. There's the toilet safety frame, so that's a frame around your toilet if you, for instance, already have a comfort height toilet. The seat riser is the next picture to it. A grab bar next to your toilet, and then also grab bars in and around the shower. What's important about grab bars is you can't just place them anywhere. There are ADA-specific heights, and those can be located at ada.org, where you can look up what height is appropriate to place grab bars at and what style is appropriate.
Okay, so I'm not sure if any of you guys have been familiar with the concept of universal design, but we're going to talk a little bit about that and the main areas that you are going to use, that universal design principles tend to apply a little bit more to the bathroom and the kitchen. I really like this quote that universal design, it should be not stigmatizing or disadvantage any group of people or certain individuals, and it should provide equal means of use for all possible users. And that can go throughout your house. Design should be equal, flexible, simple, and intuitive to use. It should require low physical effort and provide adequate space for everybody of all ages. Children, adults, doesn't matter what kind of adaptive equipment, assisted device, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're walking and ambulatory, that you're able to use it without exerting too much energy and being able to reach and manipulate all uses. So I know a lot of you, I see a decent amount of you guys in wheelchairs. How does it feel when you're trying to wash dishes at the sink and you're kind of in this awkward position? Universal design is really trying to make it so you're able to do them in a good position with good body mechanics and limit extra joint strain or pain. So this slide is showing an example of a universal design kitchen. If you can see, this is just one example. There's a lot of different ways to do this. It is typically stylish and livable for everyone. It doesn't look really different. There's no huge modifications to it that you can see, but there's a lot that are kind of embedded in the actual framework of it. The gentleman in the wheelchair is rolling underneath the stovetop. So there are doors on his. Sometimes this is open space. Sometimes there are cabinets, so it looks like it's a fake cabinet. The outlets are raised, so nobody has to be reaching all the way down to the ground in order to plug anything in. The doorways are wider, at least 36 inches, in order to allow for a wheelchair to go in and out. There's a raised dishwasher. There are varying heights of countertops. Another thing that you don't see in this one, but there's typically a pot filler that's either over the stovetop or next to it, so you don't have to put your pot of water in the sink and then drag it all the way over to the stove to get it on there. There's actually a water faucet that's next to the stove. Some other things to consider are different heights countertops, so you don't have to be straining, raising your arm up really high in order to be doing something in a seated position. Here are some examples over here. Starting with the refrigerators, the two best commonly accessible refrigerators that are still stylish, there's no true modifications to them, is either the freezer-fridge side-by-side combination, and in here, like Marlena talked about with organizing your space, putting commonly used items within reach, and you can do that for both freezer and fridge, and the French door style, where the fridge is on top and the freezer is below. You can have easy access to both. The freezer is a pull-out where the door is open side-by-side. And that is an example of the pot filler on the right. So that actually extends over top. If you put your pot over there, when you're done with boiling water, you can drag it over the countertop if able, or have someone else come pick it up for you. But generally we say put a pot holder on the countertop, put the pot on the pot holder, and then you can just slide it across the countertop rather than having to put something in your lap or try to carry it. A couple more different universal design features are having a lower microwave height. You can see the one in the bottom. And the two pictures on the left, I'm having some visual spatial issues with looking at this, are Lazy Susans. So there's two different styles. The bottom picture is where they just spin in the cabinet, and the other one is where they spin and actually pull out, so you have a little bit more access to reach for them. The top picture is an example of a pull-out cutting board, also pull-out recycling bins, and then that way, if you pull out the cutting board, you can roll right up to it or stand next to the countertop with a hand on the counter, and you can be chopping from there. When you're done with it, wipe it off, push it back in. Some other areas where we can apply universal design principles are in the bathroom. So looking at this picture, this is one example. The mirror is tilted, so if you are in a sitting position, you still have full view of your face. The sink is attached to the wall, so you're able to roll underneath it. Looking at the shower, there is no threshold. The bottom of the shower floor is a little bit pitched, so water is not going to be spraying out. There's a handheld shower head that you can take off the wall and put it back on the holder if needed. There are two grab bars in there. I think something that is not pictured because of the angle is there's a bench that's folded up into the wall, but you can pull it down and sit on that. There's in-shower lighting that increases your visibility in the shower. There's no dark spots. And there's non-skid flooring on the bottom. For universal designs, bathrooms should have comfort height toilets, non-slip floors inside the shower or the tub, and also outside the shower and the tub. Lower no threshold showers with seats, and plenty of task lighting for whichever area you're choosing to do the activity in. So here, this is animated and half of the room is gone, but I thought that this was a really good description of just looking what a standard bathroom looks like and then how it can be changed and modified after universal design. So the before picture has a tub in it, has low lighting, the vanity is closed, the toilet is a regular style. After, you can see that they have removed the tub. They have added a support wall that they can then put on grab bars, and it actually helps to attach the seat. That's the fold-down seat inside the shower. There is a handheld shower head, and all of the controls are at waist height, so everyone can control them. Nothing's out of reach. The toilet is an adjustable height toilet. The vanity you can roll under, and they replace all of the lighting with LED bulbs that are efficient and a higher wattage. You can also install higher wattage lights with a dimmer switch, so if you don't really like the high light all the time, you can then dim the light down to whatever is appropriate for you.
The term smart home is something that we're hearing more in the media nowadays, and it's becoming more accessible. Before, it was associated with Bill Gates and millions of dollars, but now a lot of these things are very accessible and affordable. The term smart home refers to a residence equipped with technology that facilitates monitoring of residents and/or promotes independence and increases residents' quality of life. Smart home can be categorized a couple different ways. The first way is hubs and controllers. So Amazon Echo Dots, Google Home, all of the things that can control multiple devices. And we're going to go into some of these things to give you a better idea of what we mean. There are smart locks. Again, we'll have an example of this with a video. Smart doorbells, thermostats, if you're familiar with Nest, home security systems, and then door openers. The first one we're going to go over is a hub and controller called Alexa. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. And we're going to have a video to describe it a little bit more. Hopefully there is sound.
talk a little bit about Alexa?
So in the meantime, I'll talk a little bit about Alexa. What it does is it's a voice-activated system in which you can hook up lights or other devices to it so that they are totally voice-controlled. So for example, instead of having to go turn on the light, you would say, Alexa, turn on light. It goes so far and so advanced as to even turn on different colored lights, all those kind of things. You can also ask it questions, so it acts in a technology way like that, which is more so how it's promoted on the TV, but it can really increase safety because, for instance, if you were going down the stairs and you want to go to a well-lit area, telling Alexa to turn on the lights for you would make it much safer. And then the next device is a Nest. It's a smart home featured thermostat. It learns your preferences so that you are not always having to adjust the thermostat yourself. It's a turnstile device, so instead of using a finger to control a button, which can be harder if we have a tremor, you can use your whole hand. And then it also helps to save energy, which is more so how Nest promotes it.
This thermostat will make you love your thermostat. It's in millions of homes around the world. It's saved billions of kilowatt hours of energy so far. And that's just the beginning. Meet the third generation Nest Learning Thermostat. It has a bigger, sharper screen, and it's even better at learning what you like. Just turn it up or down. It will catch on after a few days and create a personalized schedule for you. That's how the Nest Thermostat saves energy.
And I'll have them pause it right there.
Real family.
So another thing about the Nest thermostat, there's no true button that you have to hit with a finger, which sometimes I know incoordination is a big characteristic of ataxia. So using your whole hand or just like a palm to be able to turn it up or down is a little bit more helpful and less frustrating than trying to hit a button to make a temperature go up or down. The next one we're going to do is looking at Lutron Cassetta, which is talking a little bit more about lighting. This can also be paired and synced with Alexa or some other of those smart home devices.
Hey, I'm here in the CNF Smart Home to show you what I think is some of the best connected home tech that money can currently buy. It's the Lutron Cassetta in-wall dimming switch. Over the course of a couple months of testing here at the Smart Home, the Lutron switches have been exceptional. They work with everything we tested them with. They've always been reliable, like Mom we wanted them. Integrations have all worked. Voice commands, they're just very, very smooth, reliable, nice smart home. Now, unlike some other smart switches, the Lutron Cassetta switches don't use Wi-Fi radios. Instead, they communicate using the Lutron Connect signal, proprietary language that they use. For that reason, you'll need to have a Lutron grid plugged into your router to act as translator, but it's easy to set up and everything works really well. Aside from turning things on and off with the switch, you can use the Siri voice command, but these are Apple HomeKit compatible lights. You can say, Siri, turn the kitchen lights off, or turn the pantry light off here. You can say, turn all the downstairs lights off. All of that will work if you program it in the app. Lutron switches work with Alexa too, so if you enable that skill, you can tell Alexa to turn the lights on and off in just the same way. Other useful integrations include Wink and If, and also the Nest Learning Thermostat, which you can control right from the Lutron app. The same is true for popular smart thermostats like Honeywell and Ecobee. Compatibility is a huge strong point. All in all, Lutron in-wall dimming switches really check off all the boxes that I look for in a good smart lighting product. They work reliably well, they work with a wide variety of different products and services, and they have a very good set of features available right out of the box. With two switch starter kits.
Okay, and we can stop it there. Thank you. And the last one that we're going to just provide a little demonstration is a smart lock system that can then also be paired with Alexa, Google Home, things like that, and also can be controlled by your cell phone. And we'll stop there. Thank you. So a good feature for this is if you are having someone come into your home on a regular basis to help you with caregiving skills, or if you have a friend coming over, you don't have to take the 15, 20-yard step to the door to unlock the door. You can save some energy, use this device, and stay in the position you are in, and then enjoy the company that you have when they get in there.
So we've given you a lot of resources today, but often taking the first step is the hardest. So we always want to provide you with community resources to help you get started. Two of the ones that I'd like to highlight are the National Association of Home Builders Certified Aging in Place. They're called CAP specialists. These are specialists in universal design. You want to hire a contractor or make sure you're hiring a contractor who knows what they're doing and is aware of universal design and mobility. So these are people that would help you do that. Also, the National Council on Independent Living Centers. These are centers typically within your county that provide information and referrals on how to get funding to help with some of these modifications in your area.
And these are some links. These slides will be available online afterwards. So these are some links to just help with connecting you with contractors if you are interested in some home modifications or designs. ADA directory, that is a national, so it's nationwide, and you can look in specific regions. The Universal Design Specific, that is a great resource that has different contractors, and they can put you in touch with potentially local contractors to help you. And again, the National Association of Home Builders, they can find certified aging and space specialists, which can be therapists, can be contractors, or other health professionals. And I did want to talk about a little bit the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center. So that is specific to this area, if anyone is local. But if you go on and look for ADA centers for your region, they can put you in touch with a resource officer that can help you with home modifications, but also if you're trying to get like a modified van, or even if you need employment modifications in your workspace. They're a great resource to know about and have. If you did want to have an OT or a PT come into your house, they can come in, do a functional assessment, survey your home for hazards, and they can observe you doing specific activities that are difficult or challenging for you, from bathing and getting dressed all the way to cooking, going out in the community to grocery shopping. And they can recommend specific home modifications, assistive technology, or the way that you go about performing the task. That's what we call activity modifications.
There are financial resources if you choose to do some of these modifications yourself. The first is an access loan, and that's a loan for making home modifications at a low interest rate. The second part is a lot of these modifications, like ramps, modifying electrical outlets and fixtures, modifying kitchen cabinets, basically a lot of the things we've talked about today, you can claim as an IRS deduction. The next slide is a quote, and it's a quote I like to end with because it sums up what we talked about today. Look at the opportunity of design to empower everyone. And I think the key part there is everybody.
So we're not going to have time right now for questions, but we are available and we'll be kind of walking around. There is a slide that has our contact information on it, and we'll leave that up there for a minute or two. Oh. Or not. Okay, so those are both of our email addresses with our names. We both work at Johns Hopkins, so even if you go up to the booth, and our cards are out there if you wanted to get that as well. So thank you for your time.